And as I said, we're very happy to start this year with a topic which not many of us know about, but we've heard, which is Manusmriti by Nithin Sridhar, who's written a recent book called Chatushloki Manusmriti, which is a commentary on the opening verses of the Manusmriti. Before we get on to the talk, I'd like to introduce Nithinji. Nithin Sridhar is the director at the Indica Center for Moksha Studies, which is dedicated to create, curate, and promote content in Hindu philosophy with a special focus on Vedanta. He's also a best-selling writer on Hindu philosophy and has written books on menstruation in various cultures. He's written a commentary on the Isha Upanishad, Samanya Dharma, and various other books. The latest book, Chatushloki Manusmriti, is a bestseller and is available on Amazon in both India and Singapore. So please, Nitinji, you can continue with this wonderful session now.
Thank you, Anuradha-ji. I'm very grateful to you and Hindu Center Singapore for organizing this event. And I'm very happy to speak on my book on this topic, which is very, very close to my heart. Let me begin with a prayer. Agajanana Padmarkam Gajanana Maharnisham Anekadanta Bhaktanam Ekadantam Upasmahe. Nom Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhattakali Kapalini Durga Kshama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Ishvaro Gururatmiti Murtiveda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Again, thank you everyone. Let me just share my presentation and then start the session. I hope you are all able to see. Okay. So the topic I'll be speaking is let's revisit Manusmriti. It is a pretty straightforward topic, but at the same time, it is also a little bit of vague. Vague in the sense that it is very, very broad. You know, we can do a 1 week course on this or do a whole semester course on this because it does not specify exactly because Manusmriti is a huge ocean, just like our Shastra tradition. So we are not a single book Dharma, we are not a single book religion, but we have a forest of books. We have an ocean of books, right? So Dharma Shastra or Manusmriti is one such very, very important Shastra, but one which is also has been made very, very controversial in the last 200 years. And as such, today either you shun the book or you burn the book, but you hardly study the book. You hardly, when I say study, I'm not referring to, a lot of people do cherry pick the verses, do cherry pick the translation, perhaps also do give a very quick cover to cover reading, but that is not study. A study is a very sincere, open-minded, open-hearted, and a long-term engagement with any Shastra text, with any text for that matter, but it is very relevant for the Shastras because a Shastra, unlike a book of fiction or a book of even non-fiction, is very different. A Shastra is Guru in itself. Everybody who is into Indian philosophy to some extent do realize this, that the Shastra itself is a Guru in the sense that, like a teacher, it reveals knowledge. So the public debates on Manusmriti, I mean, either most of the people have not heard of the Manusmriti or those who have heard or have often heard about it in a very controversial situations wherein text is blamed for all the ills of the society and all imagined, all kinds of ills. But the key point is, in the public debate around Manusmriti have often driven by outrage and selective readings than understanding. So through this talk, I want to invite listeners to take a pause, uh, not to rush to make judgment, and to ask more fundamental questions. I mean, before we criticize anything, reject anything, disagree with anything, we have to first understand we have to ask ourselves. For example, in the case of Manusmriti, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of text is a Manusmriti? What is its function? What is its purpose? How does the text itself perceives itself? How does the text defines its own purposes? How have been the engagement with the Manusmriti throughout the ages? What has been Manusmriti's journey through time? What has been its function and relevance and the place in our Bharatiya civilizational context? And lastly, what is the method to approach the text? How should we approach it? How should we understand its relevance? How should we approach even these questions of relevance and understand? So these are very fundamental questions, because we have not spent time to reflect upon these questions. Often we take into propaganda as an easy way out. So there is lot of ideas floating today, such as Manusmriti was a text of some 2000 years, 3000 years old, which has zero relevance today. Or as a Smriti, it is very inferior to Vedas, therefore we can simply ignore the text. Or we have all these ideas that the whole text is very oppressive of people, sections of the society, it's oppressive of women, and many other such things. There is no doubt any text you take, for that matter, even Mahabharata, Ramayana, or any other popular text, there will always be certain ideas, certain situations, certain elements that may not make sense to a lot of people today. So it is not per se the problem of the text, but rather how the nature of the society, the nature of thought, socio-culture context changes. So this all this influence our perception also. So we might find many things problematic today, but that does not determine the intrinsic value of a text or its teaching. Are we, for example, rejecting Ramayana per se because we don't agree that Rama did the parityaga of Sita? We are not. We may debate it, we may consider it wrong, but still we are not burning the Ramayana, right? We are not putting it into dustbin. Rather, we are engaging with the text. We are learning what we can learn, utilizing the teachings where we can, and contextualize those teachings. There may be different levels of engagement among the society, but there is still engagement. But unfortunately, when it comes to Smritis in general, but Manusmriti in particular, this kind of treatment is also not there. There is only extreme emotionalism, extreme rejection, lot of political propaganda, etc. So, keeping all that aside, I want to bring to you through this presentation, to all the listeners, uh, to highlight these fundamental questions, and how does the Bharatiya tradition itself sees how does the Shastra tradition itself answers these questions. I want to keep certain ideas in front of you, just in the hope that this will result in more open-mindedness, open-heartedness to the text, and further engagement with the text. So my book, Chatushloki Manusmriti, as Anuradha ji has said, it is an attempt in this direction to create a positive engagement with the text. And out of the 2,650 verses in the book, I focus on only the first 4 verses, hence the Chatushloki, because these are very important verses. They give us a gateway to understand the rest of the text. So they answer these basic questions. Towards the end of the session, I'll just give a brief introduction to the book also. Now, going forward, first, the question that I asked here is, what kind of text is Manusmriti? So if I had to answer it in a single sentence, then we can put it in the contemporary language that Manusmriti is akin to a kind of a textbook on Dharma. What do I mean here? Manusmriti, or a Smriti by Manu, and it's also more technically correct form of the name is Manava Dharma Shastra. Manava refers to Swayambhuva Manu, who is the first teacher in the long line of tradition from whom this whole Dharma Shastra tradition has originated. And the current text that we have as Manusmriti is a redaction of this Manava Dharma Shastra that has been given to us in the Bhrigu lineage, in the Bhrigu line of transmission. So the original text was said to be very, very long, very, very huge, voluminous, and it was later redacted into smaller versions at different points in time. So the current text has around 2,650 plus verses. So Manava Dharma Shastra, Manava is Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, the first Manu, and Dharma Shastra itself has two words, Dharma and Shastra. So Dharma refers to the subject matter, and Shastra refers to any work which systematically elucidates on a subject matter. A detailed, systematic, comprehensive elucidation on a subject matter is a Shastra. A Shastra is that work which orders knowledge in a particular field of knowledge. It orders how it's a pedagogical tool to teach that vidya. So Manush Dharma Shastra, Manava Dharma Shastra, therefore Manusmriti is a Dharma Shastra. That is, the subject matter of the Manusmriti is Dharma, and the text purpose is to teach that Dharma. In the Shastra tradition, the technical term is that it is a pramana. It's a pramana Shastra. Pramana means a valid means of knowledge, a authentic, authoritative method through which correct knowledge can be understood, can be gained, is transmitted. Such a thing is called pramana. So, for example, pratyaksha pramana refers to direct perception. Through our eyes, ears, etc., we perceive the external world. So, this is pratyaksha pramana. Similarly, we have shabda pramana, which is knowledge gained through words and sentences, from words and sentences. So, that group of those words and sentences constitute a shastra, wherein through a systematic presentation is there. So, Manusmriti is that a pramana shastra, which in simple terms is a kind of a standard textbook. So if you want to study physics at a higher level, in 12th board and all, people study Resnick Halliday, H.C. Verma. At least in India, we do that. Used to do that. Similarly, at higher level, there are higher texts. For chemistry, you have like that. For mathematics, you have like that. Similarly, for Dharma, we have the Smritis. The Vedas are the ultimate, the source, pramana. Vedo akilam dharma moolam. The very moola, the root, the foundation of Dharma is Veda. And it is these Vedic teachings which the rishis have reformulated in a more accessible manner, in a more systematic manner as the Smritis. And Manusmriti is the foremost among them. So contrary to popular perception that Manusmriti is either like a constitution-like legal text whose every word was hegemonically imposed by a king in the past, or the perception that Manusmriti was like a biblical text imposed by a church-like structure, we have no evidence for both of them. And also contrary to the other assumption that because Manusmriti was not hegemonically imposed either by the king or the church-like religious structure. Therefore, Manusmriti was not at all important. It was never considered important, or it had no role, no influence in history. Contrary to all this popular perception, the fact is throughout the ages, the role of the Manusmriti and other Smritis have been as Pramana Shastra, as a kind of a standard encyclopedic textbook kind of work, which is referred to gain authentic knowledge about Dharma. And then this knowledge was used in different contexts. Say so for example, in the past, the legal jurisprudence, the judges and the kings, everybody was well versed in the Dharma Shastras. So they used to determine resolve the issues by considering the ground facts as well as the principles in the Dharma Shastra. Similarly, when it comes to matter of acharam, the determination of the festivals, the dates, and all those things, everything, even today, we had this Sankranti, whether it falls this year, the Sankranti, did it fall on 14th or 15th? Should we celebrate on 14th or 15th? So when this question arises, if you see from the Shringeri Sharda Peetham, the clarification on this matter, what it has to be on the 15th, because the Punya Kala is on 15th, because of what Dharma Shastra text Dharma Sindhu says. So this is how the Manusmriti or other Dharma Shastras function as a source of knowledge, valid source of knowledge. So what is the purpose then? What is the end goal of the Manu's teachings? What is it trying to convey? We already noted that it is a textbook on Dharma. So we have to understand what is Dharma. In Hindu philosophy, we have this fourfold Purusharthas. I'm sure all of you are aware. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. And Artha, Kama about this world. Moksha is liberation, spiritual liberation. Dharma is the connecting link. So, but what is this Dharma? There are many definitions of Dharma. But one of the most important definition of Dharma is found in Vaisheshika Sutra, which says, Yatho Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Siddhihi Sa Dharma. So Dharma refers to those human actions which, when performed, results in the accomplishment of Abhyudaya, which is material well-being. Well-being in this world and the next. That is attainment of Sukha in this world, attainment of Swarga, heaven, after the death of the body. And Nishreyasa is Moksha, supreme good, Moksha. Manusmriti says that this text, Manusmriti, expounds Dharma in its entirety, both the virtues, that is the good, the Dharma part, as well as its opposite, the false, the Adharma of human actions, and sets forth the timeless code of conduct. So Manusmriti is defining its role. So Manusmriti is self-aware in the sense that it knows what it is doing. It is itself telling that my purpose is to reveal knowledge about Dharma and Adharma. So Manusmriti enunciates for our purpose, in order to lead individuals to overall well-being. So this is important. Abhyudaya Nishreyasa. So Manusmriti enunciates a dharmic path to happiness and overall well-being, which involves attaining Sukha, happiness, Swarga, heaven, Chitta Shuddhi, purification of the mind, and Moksha. This is the purpose of Manusmriti. So when we read the text, even when we want to read all the problematic, so-called problematic portions, controversial portions, all of them, we have to keep this idea in the very back of the mind, that the actual purpose of the Smriti. Unless, if we lose sight of this, then the text may not make sense to us. Because Dharma is very sukshma. The secondary aspect of the text is, it's not only the purpose is to facilitate individuals on a path towards overall well-being, towards Sukha, Swarga, and Moksha, but also it conceives a vision of a ritualistic social order wherein each and every individual is enabled, facilitated, and empowered to pursue their self-actualization and self-realization by indicating to them effective methods that is most suitable to them. So it is not speaking of about the individual's path in an isolated sense. Rather, it is also have giving us a vision of a ritualistic social order and interpersonal principles of interpersonal dimension, dynamism, and interactions, wherein the idea again is that all the individuals of the society are able to freely work towards their overall well-being. Sukha, Swarga, and Moksha. So this is a deeper end goal of Manu and other Smriti Shastras to provide frameworks for ritualization of entire society, such that all individual, interpersonal, and social actions become transformed into Karma Yoga and become anchored in the vision of moksha. So this one sentence itself can be elaborated for a whole session, but we don't have that time. But it suffices to understand that the purpose of the Smritis, the purpose of Manusmriti is to, it speaks about human actions, and its goal is to ritualize even secular actions, ritualize even social actions, ritualize even interpersonal actions, such that we are able to anchor ourselves in Karma Yoga. We are able to, as the Bhagavad Gita says, that when the path to moksha is that when you transform your karma into Karma Yoga. So the Smriti Shastras, the Dharma Shastras want to facilitate this process, because it is not that you commit murder and then say that I am committing it with Nishkama Bhava, so it is Karma Yoga. Right? If you're committing murder for some greed purpose, then you cannot make it Karma Yoga. It is still Adharma. So the Dharma Shastras, the Smriti Shastras indicate what actions is Dharma, what actions is Adharma. And this is very, very important. For this reason, Bhagavan Krishna also in Gita says that to know what actions are to be done, what actions are not to be done, what is Dharma, what is Adharma, you have to consult Shastras. So that starts from the Vedas, the Smritis, and other Shastras are the sources for this knowledge. Now, the next question is, what has been Manusmriti's journey through time? How has our civilization engaged with the text? I will not go into detail for the lack of time, but you can see that 6th century, 12th century, 7th century, from the dynasties from the north, west, south, all these different dynasties, the kings, when some of these kings, either have been praised as walked the path of Manu, as in the Chalukya dynasty inscription, one of the king is referred as walked the path of Manu, or some of the grants directly quote verses from Manusmriti, but the king is praised as committed to dharma and just like Manu. So you will see that Manu's teachings were held as the ideal. And those kings who tried to match up to that ideal to the best of their efforts in their personal life as well as in their rule in the kingdom, they were greatly praised. So we cannot say that Manusmriti had no influence throughout the history. It never functioned as a constitution-like legal book, but the influence of its principles, its ideas, were very much there in the society. It set out the standard, the ideal. It set out instructions about the paths for various people to attain dharma, to attain swarga, to attain sukha, to attain moksha, which were built upon later in different texts by different acharyas and different sampradayas. But the core principles, core ideas have been revealed to us, given to us by Manu, and later by other Smritis also. From Shankaracharya, I have actually collated that Adi Shankaracharya in his Prashtanatare Bhashya, he cites Manusmriti at least 30-35 times. One of the most important disciples of Shankaracharya was Sureshwaracharya, who was also called Vishwarupa. He is a great commentator on Yagyavalkya Smriti. And there, in that commentary also, he cites Manusmriti to support his arguments. The great Mimamsakacharya, Kumarila Bhatta, places Manu as head among the Smritis. Shankaracharya also considers Manu and Vyasa as both on an equal pedestal, as both being Shishtas, valid, authoritative teachers. So we'll see that, and not just that, even this table I have taken from Patrick Olivell's book. But what is interesting here is he compares three medieval works. The works composed between 12th century and 15th century, Lakshmidharas, Kritya Kalpataru, Jimutavahanas, Vahanas, Dayabhaga, and Vidyaranya's Parashara Madhaviya. So these three are Dharma Shastra texts composed between 12th and 15th century. And all of them, the nature of the Dharma Shastra works is you always quote the source text, the works before you, that came before you. Among all the Smritis and the Dharma Sutras that are quoted, you will see that all of them quotes from Manusmriti the maximum number of times. Kriya Kalpataru quotes from Manu 587 times. And Dayabhaga 101 times. And Parashara Madhava 621 times. Compared to this, other texts are quoted less. Yagyavalkya and Narada are also, and Brihaspati are also quoted large number of times, but still they come in second or third or fourth place, but the Manu comes in the very first place. So this shows that contrary to the popular narrative which says that after the British came to India and when they were looking to set a legal court, they then created importance to Manusmriti by taking that as a basis. It is not true that they created Manusmriti or give importance to Manusmriti. The fact was they used Manusmriti because Manusmriti was already established as the foremost of the Dharma Shastra texts for thousands of years. This we have to keep in mind. Next, it is not that the text, it is not that simply some inscriptions quoted praised the king as a great follower of Manu, or it is not that some of the acharyas simply took the name of Manu and praised him, and the influence of Manusmriti was only limited to those academic or simply for praising and such a thing. Rather, I have included three instances from history and also the contemporary point wherein Manusmriti has been taken as a go-to text to resolve issues which have bearing on our real life. So the first example I take is from Shankaracharya's Brahmasutra Bhashya, and there a discussion comes in the Brahma Sutra, the discussion about how the practice of ashrama dharma is very, very necessary to attain chitta shuddhi needed to pursue moksha. So to gain qualification, yogyata for atma jnana, one has to practice ashrama dharma is established by Badarayana in the Brahma Sutra. But then the question occurs, everybody is not following any ashrama dharma. There are a large section of the society is kind of does not belong to any varnas or any ashramas. There are people such as widowers who are neither married nor in sannyasa. There are those, say for example, the ganikas, the prostitutes or the courtesans. They are not in Grihastha ashrama. So what about them? And there are a lot of other people who do not belong to any of them, or who are not even practicing those ashrama dharma, even if they belong to ashrama. What about them? So do they not have any competency to practice moksha, to pursue moksha is the question. There, Vyasa and following him, the Shankaracharya affirm that self-knowledge is accessible to everybody. Though Varnashrama Dharma is the most important, the primary means to attain that yogyata to pursue moksha, that competency or yogyata can also be gained by other methods also. So it is not that those who don't practice Varnashrama Dharma, or those who do not belong to those any ashrama, etc., cannot pursue moksha to the best of their ability. They can. And the text used as a pramana, as valid source for this knowledge by Shankaracharya, is Manusmriti. So Shankaracharya quotes one of the verses from Manusmriti, which says that whether one is able to practice any of the the ashrama dharma or any of other swadharma or not, one should practice japa. And it says this japa is the more superior to all other karma kanda, all other actions, all other rituals. So it is independently very effective. So using this, Shankaracharya argues that japa, upavasa, devata aradhana, etc. are other methods which can be practiced by one and all. And this is not the only instance. Manusmriti gives many other methods like this. We will see some of them later, but briefly, serving the parents is also considered as one of the path for uh, for chitta shuddhi and yogyata for moksha. Similarly, serving the guru is considered one. Tapasya is considered one. So there are many, many different methods that Manusmriti indicates. The second instance is during the partition. You all must be aware of the great massacre at the Noakhali, right? There, a lot of temples were destroyed, forced conversions were attempted, carried out, etc. So, a lot of people, Hindus, were fed beef forcibly, so that they to make them dharma brashta and then convert them to Islam. So, this was practiced in Noakhali and surrounding areas, and it put a lot of Hindu families to great suffering. So, at that time, Karapatri Swami Hariharananda, he toured those areas, giving solace to people, assuring them of support, helping them in different ways, and giving them Rama Rama and other japas to find mental peace. But among them, there are also a large groups of families, as I said, who were forced to consume beef. So for them, Karapatri Swami convinced them by saying that an act which has been committed under coercion, they have no religious validity. So therefore, they stand null and void. He cited Manusmriti to make this argument that this whole attempt to this whole the victims, they did not consume beef voluntarily because of taste or something like that, but they were forced to do it. So it is not their fault. Therefore, they have not become dharma brishta. So he gave these, convinced those families, gave a very decisive judgment on the matter, and prevented conversion of thousands of families into Islam. And he used Manusmriti's a clear statement about this, that any transaction done through coercion, etc., is null and void. Very recently, just 2 years back, I used the same verses, same argument in the context of, Tirupati Tirumala. There was this controversy about how the laddus that are offered as prasadam was contained animal fats, including beef tallow. So obviously, hundreds of thousands of devotees have been consuming this prasadam, and these were also offered to Bhagavan, etc. I used the same verses from the Manusmriti and argued that consumption through deception is also a form of coercion. Therefore, the rendering the whole act religiously void. So there is no culpability on the part of the innocent victims, innocent devotees. So there is no adharma, there is no papam committed by them, is what the argument I said. But they could definitely undertake some japa, etc., for ritual purification and for, say, sake of peace of mind. So this was the argument I made using the same Manusmriti. So these three instances are enough to illustrate that the teachings of our Dharma Shastras, Manu and other Smritis, they have real life importance. So today we are speaking about Indian knowledge system. We are speaking about Bharatiya Drishti. We need to have our own Drishti towards the world. Only then we will become independent. We need to decolonize ourselves. All those narrative is there. But my position is that you cannot decolonize yourself. You cannot develop your own drishti as long as you do not develop your own drishti in the socio-cultural and civilizational aspects. And for that, you need to revive Dharma Shastra. You need to engage with the Dharma Shastra. Because Dharma, it is Dharma which has, and Dharma Shastra which has under its purview, under its field of work, all the socio-cultural civilizational issues. So take any issues, burning issues such as abortion, marriage, age of marriage, divorce, and all these things. There are a lot of narratives, a lot of propaganda, a lot of discourse happening all the time. But we are basically parroting what the kind of discourse that is already happening in the West. So this is not our own drishti. So we have to bring in our drishti. For bringing in our drishti, we need to bring in Dharma Shastras. We cannot ignore it. So these three examples are enough, give weightage to this idea that we cannot ignore Dharma Shastra if we want to resolve socio-cultural civilization issues. Resolve these issues, build up our own drishti. Now, people often ask, what is the relevance of Manusmriti today? They say that these Smriti texts were composed some 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, at when socio-political situations were different, cultural situation was different. So these texts are basically kind of a description of a society of the past. So their only utility today is to study them as a museum pieces, as artifacts of the past to understand past society. But is this really so? I want to quote a few examples to show how Manusmriti and other Dharma Shastras are very relevant today in our everyday life. Forget about all socio-cultural views that I mentioned just now. Even in a everyday manner, there are great many insights in Manusmriti that can help us to lead ethically meaningful life, spiritually elevating lives. And these insights range from our dining etiquettes to maintaining disciplined life, discipline in our day-to-day life, hard work and idealism, hard work, professionalism in our work, interpersonal relationships. So there are so many things, so many great insights in this text that are very useful to us. So I've just quoted here a few examples about, for example, with regard to food. Manusmriti speaks about how the direction we face when we eat food has different kinds of effect on our life, on our body, on our life, on our mind, which can give us longevity, which can give us spiritual benefit. All these ideas are there. Similarly, the ideas such as the verse I have quoted here, you can read them. It shows how it is important to worship the food which you are eating it, and never to disparage it. Only when we treat the food with respect, we rejoice while eating it, we only then we welcome when we welcome the food, we worship it, then the food will impart strength and vigor. If we are disrespectful to the food, if we don't recognize the sacredity of the food, if we throw food either here and there and disrespect it, and it destroys it, it cannot grant us health. We see this happening in our everyday life. These are the teachings that we have also received from our parents and grandparents when we were children, right? So this is another evidence that how teachings of the Shastras have trickled, immersed into our everyday life. We may not have Manusmriti in our homes, but we have all learned from our parents and from their parents, that we should always respect the food and we should never disrespect. We have these ideas about the food being Annapurna, food being Bhagavan, right? So this is how the Shastras function in everyday life. Similarly, in the matters of livelihood, Manu says in normal times one should live by resorting to that means of livelihood which involves no suffering or very little trouble to other living beings. So we have to practice a way of life to the best of our ability wherein the himsa is limited. Or at least the unnecessary himsa is not there. We have to avoid those actions, those means of livelihood where there is unnecessary himsa, unnecessary violence towards others, other living beings, other animals, plants, whatever it is. Similarly, Manu says, one shall not, through desire, become addicted to any sensual objects. Excessive addiction to these one shall avoid by mental reflection. So he does not simply say that addiction is problematic, that everybody knows. But he also mentions how to overcome it, how to avoid it. It is through mental reflection. It is through manana and nididhyasa. One should wander about in the world, keeping one's dress, speech, thoughts in conformity to one's age, occupation, wealth, learning, and family. So this is a very, very, very practical advice. That how should we, should be our etiquette? How should we dress? How should we appear in public? How should we interact with others? And this is what differentiates a cultured person, an elevated person, a gentleman from the others, right? So these are very, very practical. I'm just giving just few instances of such teachings. Lot of interpersonal ideas, relationships, how to carry it has been mentioned in the Manusmriti. It speaks about, I mentioned how serving the parents, taking care of them, respecting them, this itself is a spiritual path in itself. It says that the guru, the preceptor, the father, the mother, and the elder brother should never be disrespected, even though one be distressed. So even if they speak something that hurt you, that made you feel distressed, but you may note that you may try to you don't need to force yourself to agree to what others are forcing you, but you should not disrespect, because it says the guru, the preceptor, is the embodiment of Brahman, the father is the embodiment of Prajapati, the mother is the embodiment of Bhumi, and the brother is the embodiment of one's self itself. So one should, even when disagreeing, even when expressing opposition, one should never cross the line. One should never disrespect. One should never ill-treat them. The another place Manusmriti says one should never abandon your father, mother, your wife or spouse, or your children. So these are very important ideas. Just compare this with what is happening today. The parents have become elderly. They are thrown away either in old age home. They are left away. A lot of people, all of you know this. Many of you are outside India, but your elderly parents are back home by their own. They are facing innumerable difficulties. You're also facing mental turmoil. You cannot leave the job there and come here, but you're also worried about parents. So Manusmriti suggests to avoid all these problems altogether. It says that you should never abandon. So there are many such ideas with respect to husband and wife relationship. It is often accused that Manusmriti is anti-women, etc. But what Manusmriti says is, where women are honored, the devatas rejoice. Where they are not honored, where they are disrespected, they're all ritualistic acts, all spiritual activities, they all become fruitless. Where female relations it's not just the wife or daughter or sister or mother, whoever is the female in the family, where female relations live in grief, the family perishes wholly. But where they are unhappy, where they are not unhappy, where they are happy, the family prospers. And the gist of the ideal married life, it gives in a verse which says, where the husband is pleased with the wife and the wife is pleased with her husband, happiness will assuredly be lasting. See, what a beautiful thought. What a wonderful thought. There are many such examples that are very relevant to our everyday life. But there are also many other very deep, spiritually relevant ideas, spiritually relevant teachings, philosophical teachings, dharmic methods, which are not known from any other sources, are also available. So, for example, Manusmriti speaks about 10 forms of dharma, or dharmasya dasha lakshanam, the 10 characteristics of dharma, or the 10 methods of dharma: steadiness, forgiveness, self-control, abstention from unrighteous appropriation, purity, indriya nigraha, viveka, jnana, satya, akrodha. If you are able to practice even one of them throughout your life, then that itself gives you great merit, great purification of the mind. And these ideas are also can be used to analyze your society, resolve contemporary issues. This is what having a dharmic lens to understand the world means. Currently, we are working in Eurocentric categories. We analyze all the issues in the format of rights versus duties, this right, that right. We analyze it in terms of liberty, equality, all these categories which are Eurocentric. But we have our own categories: dharma, adharma. In dharma, we have all these ideas: ahimsa, satyaste, yashaucham, indriya nigraham. These are the ideas that we have to keep in mind, we have to develop further. And in sixth chapter, Manusmriti speaks of a very important verse which says about how practice of ahimsa, practice of vairagya or indriya nigraha, that is non-attachment to the senses, practice of dharma mentioned, prescribed by the Vedas, practice of tapasya, all these are means to attain Brahman. So it gives different methods. Out of this, when we speak about this varna, ashrama, etc., they all come under only one principle here, that is the acts prescribed by the Veda. wherein certain restrictions and other things are there. But all these other methods, ahimsa, indriya nigraha, tapasya, they are common for everybody. Anybody or everybody can adopt this practice as their spiritual path to develop chitta shuddhi and to pursue moksha. All these are dharmic methods. What we forget is that we are selectively highlighting Manusmriti and thinking that it is exclusive in nature. But in reality, Manusmriti is the most among the most inclusive text, because Sanatana Dharma is inclusive. But our notion of inclusiveness is not that everybody has only single path as the path to the highest truth. We are not a single path, single book, single one medicine for all illness kind of civilization. Rather, the fruits are there for everybody, but the paths will be different because we are in different arcs in our journey towards moksha. We have different competences, we have different ritual conditionings, we have different mental conditionings, we have different ritual competencies, we have different capabilities, or our life situations are different. We are in different place in life. So based on all these, different methods have been there, given to us. So we are including everybody by giving hundreds of different methods such that everybody is taken care of. Everybody has a dharmic method to attain sukha, swarga, chitta shuddhi, moksha. So this is the heart, at the heart of the Manusmriti. Now, at the very beginning of the presentation, I asked that the very last question was how to approach and how to understand Smriti texts. Now, the popular contemporary narrative is that Manusmriti has to be understood like a dead text. That is, it is something, it is an artifact of the past, which has no relevance today. Only studying for the academic curiosity to understand a society of the past. So basically, they are classifying Manu and other Smritis as a dead text. So a piece of relic or piece of junk whose purpose is to only for academic junkies or curious readers, but have no real relevance today. Or it is a text of a dead civilization. A dead text is a text of a dead civilization. We have many such works such as Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greek civilization, which the civilization no longer exists, so they don't have any practical value. They only have historical value. A dead text is a text which has remained unengaged with and unutilized for many centuries. So many people make this argument that it was the British who gave importance to Manusmriti, but before that, for thousands of years, there was no importance to Manusmriti, nobody heard about it, it had no basis, etc. Or a dead text is a text which has no teachings that can be considered transcending the limitations of time and space, deshakal. So all these arguments are made with respect to Manusmriti also. But as we saw in the very brief presentation in the last 1 hour, Manusmriti does not belong to any of these categories. It is not a dead text. If it were dead text, then how could we find that the text has been engaged by our acharyas throughout the last many centuries? The works have been utilized to resolve real life issues, even in our contemporary times. The work has a lot of teachings that are very relevant to us even today in our day-to-day life, in our how the society should function, how the socio-cultural, civilizational deep questions, deep controversies can be resolved. We see relevance if we begin to study Manusmriti in earnestness, with sincerity, not with prejudice. So Manusmriti is clearly a living text which is aware of its own object, its purpose, and its end results. It has seen engagement, debate, and applicability throughout ages. It is very much relevant to address contemporary situations and has insights valuable to us here and now in our day-to-day lives, relevant to our day-to-day lives, relevant to our interpersonal relationships, in our social interactions, relevant to the spiritual health of the society, spiritual health of an individual, relevant to socio-cultural, legal, and civilizational issues. And Manusmriti has its foundation in the Vedas. It has its foundation in the eternal truths and values which are beyond time, which will always remain valid. It is Sanatana. So we call our dharma as Sanatana Dharma because dharma by definition is Sanatana. And you cannot speak about dharma by sidelining a textbook on dharma. Therefore, Manusmriti has its foundation in these eternal truths, eternal values, which it is the source from which we can know this knowledge, we can gain this knowledge. It is, of course, it is a text of a living civilization. So we are not the Egyptians, we are not the Mesopotamians, we are not the Greeks, we are not dead, we are here and now. So this is a text of our living civilization. So to make a sincere engagement with Manusmriti or any other Smritis for that matter, or any other Shastriya texts in the Hindu parampara, the approach is to approach it as a living text, not as a dead text. To understand it, open your heart, open your minds, with sincerity, approach the text, study the text, and contextualize its teachings to address contemporary issues, to develop our own drishti, to how to understand the world, where we stand, where we need to go, at an individual level, at a social level, at the cosmic level. Manu and other Smritis are very much needed. They act as a gateway to understand ourselves better, our society better, to develop our own India's grand Bharatiya narrative, grand Hindu narrative. I just want to take a few more minutes to just give a brief about my book, Chatushloki Manusmriti. What the book offers is an exploration into fundamental questions such as what is dharma, its definition, its purpose in great detail. We study that in the book. What are the authentic sources from which the tenets of dharma can be known? What are the pramanas of dharma? Who is eligible to study the dharma, teach dharma, practice dharma? How practicing dharma is helpful? What is the end result? Why study Dharma Shastras? What are its place and relevance in contemporary society, contemporary life? What is the deeper meaning of Varna? One of the very controversial topic which we did not touch today is the topic of Varna. Is it a reference to profession? Is it reference to psychological category? Is it something else? So I have a long chapter in the appendix 1 which examines the multifaceted, multidimensional nature of Varna from a Shastriya perspective. So all these questions, some of them I explain very briefly today, but they are dealt with in great detail in the book. But though this work is focused on the 4 verses of the Manusmriti, the study in the book is not limited to Manusmriti. Rather, the work draws from the Vedas, the Upanishads, Manu, Yagyavalkya, Parashara, Narada, and other Smritis, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Mahabharata, number of Puranas, Vishnu Purana, Bhagavad Purana, etc. It cites from these texts It cites from the great works of great acharyas such as Adi Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vallabhacharya, Swami Vidyaranya, Kumarila Bhatta, even Sri Aurobindo and others are quoted in the book. So the goal of my book is to restore Manusmriti to its rightful place, not as a relic, but as a living source of dharma, and open a gateway to authentically engage with Manu and other Smriti texts. Gateway to authentically engage with the Dharma Shastras. I hope, my hope is that the book will serve as a guide for the students, scholars, seekers, anybody interested in Dharma, any devotee, any seeker, any practitioner. So it is my open invitation to everyone to rediscover our Dharma tradition by engaging with the book intellectually and spiritually. Thank you for your support. I'm very thankful to Anuradha ji and the Hindu Center for giving me this opportunity. The book is available on Amazon. If you are in India, then Amazon, Padega India, or Hindu eShop or other bookstores, it's available. In Singapore, Anuradha ji mentioned Amazon Singapore has the book. So do check it out, do buy the book, do study it, and don't forget to rate the book on Amazon, comment, give a feedback on the Amazon. I look forward to all your feedback. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take it. Thank you very much. Shri Guru Dev Namaha.
Thank you so much, Nitinji, for taking us through this wonderful text. You know, it's neither a relic nor is it like a biblical text which is set in stone or something. And even in today's world, it's so relevant because you gave us examples of day-to-day living where it can be useful in times of emergency, you know, whether it is at the time of partition or whether in recent times, the Tirupati Laddu, you know, it is verses from Manusmriti and such Shastras that really guide us, even as we are guided by a lot of secular laws. You know, in different countries, the secular law protects us, but our Dharma Shastra has a way of not just protecting us, but taking us to the next step, which is what you highlighted, self-actualization and self-realization. That Manusmriti is also allowing us to make our lives such that we can attain this goal also. So I think it's an amazing text, and you give wonderful examples. I'm all the participants. You can ask any questions. You can give your comments, what you found interesting in the text or anything, and then if there's anything else, I'll ask. I have many questions to ask Nitinji. Okay, Varshini, of course, says this is an incredibly enlightening session, and yes, we are eternally grateful because not everybody talks about these texts in the way. Karthik, yes, can you raised your hand? You can ask a question. If you want, you can switch on your camera so that we can also get to see you, but it's purely voluntary. Yeah.
Good evening, Nitinji.
Namaste.
Good evening. I just want to clarify, as you mentioned. First thing, thanks for this in-depth knowledge, which may not be available in common books. And one of the common complaint, in a way, can say that this practice, some sort like sati, which was when the husband passed away, the woman should follow in the fire. That kind of things was, I'm not sure whether it's true or not. Is it mentioned in the Manu Shastra? That's my question.
Yeah, Manusmriti does not mention sati at all. But there are other texts such as Parashara Smriti which do mention. But again, this is a topic, it has been used as a badge to beat any Hindu renaissance or any Hindu discussion. But there is a lack of nuance in understanding this sati. All the texts, all the tradition, both in the on the ground practice, in the historical evidence, as well as the textual evidence, show that the practice was very, 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 very less. You will hardly find any instances of this practice. It was very small number of women actually took to sati, and even in the Mahabharata and all, we have very few examples. even historically, the examples are very less. So very small micro segment of the widows actually did sati. And this was not by accident, but it was by design, because the ritual, how it is conceived in the Shastra tradition, or in the how the ritual itself is designed, is that the ritual, the mantras, if you read and all, it will say that the parents and the family and or the village, the community is supposed to try to convince the girl to not to commit sati. So only when remains steadfast in that decision, only then she is allowed. Otherwise, the purpose, the function of the family, etc., is to convince her not to do it. And while the Dharma Shastra itself has different opinions on this matter. There are some, such as Medhatiti, who consider sati as a form of suicide and opposite. But there are others, such as in Parashara Madhava and Apararka, etc., who consider this, the correct name is not sati, but rather Anugamana or Sahagamana. They consider this also as a practice of dharma, but which is by design voluntary, exceptional, and not at all compulsory, and never to be forced, and always something that women have to be convinced out of it. So this is the position of the Dharma Shastras at large. Manusmriti does not speak about it, but and I have a long essay on this. If you are interested, you can do a Google search titled "Revisiting Sati" by Nithin Sridhar. If you will just get that article, it's a 12,000 worded essay
Can
which
repeat the
examines
name from?
Revisiting Sati by Nithin Sridhar. Let me just check if I can share the link itself in the chat box. I have shared the link to the article in the chat box. So, contrary to on many issues, people think that our Dharma Shastras is monolithic, that everything is, this is it. Somebody says this is it, and that is the end of the discussion. It is not like that. Our acharyas, the different writers of the Dharma Shastras, they have all debated to death all the issues that we find controversial today, and there have been to and fro, and the discussion is continuous. So the core text, the Smritis and all are the core primary sources, but based on them, there have been many discussions, many different schools of thought, different opinions have been there. The unfortunate thing is that in the last, the colonial, the British colonialism destroyed our indigenous systems of engagement, education, etc. So that Shastriya engagement on this matter all kind of fell down. So that is why we had, the need is to revive this Vada tradition, this Dharma Shastra tradition, wherein we can carry it from where we stopped.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Krishnan ji
Thanks.
has also raised his hand. Would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, Hariom, Nitinji, thank you very much for this. Putting this much maligned text into focus, and actually, saying it's a live text. I think that is I didn't realize this until I listened to you. So thank you so much for clearing the avarna in our minds about this text. I had one question, not so much about Manusmriti, but what you have explained in terms of the values and dharma are found in, let's say, Ramayana or Niti Shadakam by Viduraj. So, why would someone who has access to multiple dharma granthas, what is the reason for somebody to go towards Manusmriti? Is there anything unique that one can pick up from this versus other dharma granthas?
Yeah. Very interesting question. But before answering that unique part, But I would like to highlight that the same question can be flipped and can asked, why should one study Ramayana when there are hundreds of granthas? Or why should one study Mahabharata when there are hundreds of granthas?
Right.
Why should one study Bhagavad Gita? Why should one study any text, right?
Right.
So it is not a question of which text to study or not. The correct way to approach this is that the whole Dharma Shastra Parampara, the Shastriya Parampara, we have to see in as a whole, not in isolation. So the contemporary method is to see these texts as isolated islands, right? In the Western philosophy, we have this the philosophy by Kant, philosophy by René Descartes and others. So all are different islands. But here it's not an island; it is all together. So Ramayana also quotes from Manusmriti. Mahabharata quotes from Manusmriti at multiple instances. It takes the name of Manu as a great teacher at multiple instances. So it has to be seen together. So what is the uniqueness, if you ask? So among the Shastra Pramanas for Dharma, first comes the Veda, and then the Smritis, and then the Itihasa Puranas. And later, these are the primary works, and later there are many secondary works. Say, for example, even our Kavyas, such as Kalidasa and all, have a lot of Dharma teachings in them.
Right.
Or the secondary works such as commentaries, Maidatiti's commentary or any other Dharma Sindhu kind of Nibandha works. These are all secondary works on Dharma, which kind of elaborate. But the primary texts are these. But all these that I mentioned, all they have their own unique way. For example, Veda is the independent source of Dharma. It is Swata Pramana, right? And there are many ideas in the Veda. The Veda is lost. So we have only very small portion of the Veda. Maybe 1% of the whole Veda. Veda is infinite. It is not only Anadi, it is not only Apaurisha, it is infinite. There are infinite branches of Veda. We don't have access to whole thing. So what is available is very small portion, first. Second, the format it is available, it is not easy for the commoners to study it. The Veda Adhyayana in the format it is to be studied, it can be done only by a very small section of the society. So for the common people, there is no direct access to Veda. So how then our acharyas, our great rishis have conceived of different ways that Vedic knowledge can become accessible, right? So one of the ways is Smritis, wherein the teachings of the Vedas have been systematically presented as Smritis. So the unique aspect of the Smriti is that it is a textbook. That is, it is a Shastra. So when you call it a Shastra in a very technical sense, it means it is a systematic presentation. Contrary to this, in contrast to this, Ramayana is also a text of Dharma, but it is presented in a narrative format. Through the life of Rama, it is and other characters, Dharma and Adharma Jnana is given, but it is not given in a systematic way like as in a textbook. So you see the audience for the targeted audience for the both of these texts are different. They may overlap, but they may not be same. Anybody who's similarly for the Mahabharata also. Mahabharata has lot of discussions on dharma, etc., but they are all embedded within the narrative structure. Right. So there is a simplification process. Okay. One of the great, I think some Vidwan or some Acharya in the past, they mentioned that what Smriti says is like a father teaching a son. What the Mahabharata or Ramayana, Itihasa Purana tells is like a friend advising the friend. And what the Kavyas teach is like a lover or a wife or a spouse, having a discussion with the spouse.
Prabhu Samhita, Kanta Samhita, and
exactly. Samhita. Yes, exactly. So that is exact. So this is the different format of dissemination of knowledge. Then on the ground, we have all these natakas, the nrityas, the whole Natya Shastra tradition, which also makes this in a graphical display format to take it to the last man standing. So these are all different formats of dissemination of the same knowledge. But the Dharma Shastras are very relevant because of their academic in nature, because of the systematic in nature. So, for example, when say there is a dispute on any technical matter, so the primary source to resolve those disputes are the Dharma Shastras, and the responsibility to resolve those disputes are also those who are learned in the Dharma Shastras, not the Kavyakaras, not the Natya Shastra people, or not anybody else, right? So I hope you got the answer to your question.
Thank you. No, it's a great answer. Thank you.
You mentioned, Nitinji, that the audience was different for each of these scriptures. So at that time when Manusmriti was composed, what was the audience that it was reaching out to?
It is very difficult to pinpoint things because the text we have been often dated by the Indologists to 2nd century BC to 2nd century CE, but the dating is limited only to the extant text. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that Manu Dharma Shastra, when we speak, it is much, much older. The first teacher is the Swayambhuva Manu itself. So if you take traditional dating, then it goes back to millions of years, right? So even if you don't take it, but the point is, it is very, very old, and it has been redacted at multiple points of time. So you will see that it has been preserved in the Guru Shishya Parampara, wherein just like the Upanishads or just like any text today, there are a very small section of people who are doing the Veda Dhyayana, who are doing the Shastra Dhyayana in the way it is supposed to be done, with all the niyamas, tapasya, and by Gurukula Vasa, etc. Very small section of the society who are doing it. But the rest of the society also has access to this knowledge in different methods, in various diluted formats or simplified formats. So my idea is that was true for even the past, while a small section studied it because it has to be studied in a thorough manner. The ideas, the teachings were then communicated to others either through direct interaction, through direct instruction, or through some other works, simplified works. Just like in the not everybody studies Brahma Sutra Bhashya with Bhamati Tika and Kalpataru Tika under a teacher while studying in the Gurukula, right? Most of the people don't even study Bhashya. They will study Atma Bodha, Tattva Bodha, Viveka Chudamani that Acharya has written. But there is no difference in the teaching. Acharya, who has written Bhashya and great depth to these Upanishads and others, has condensed those teachings in this Upadesha Sahasri and other Prakarana Granthas. But it depends upon the people. Somebody may be more, invested in these Prakarana Granthas. Somebody may be more invested in the Stotra Granthas. Somebody may go, very small section will go for detailed Bhashya Grantha study, right? So, but they all are accessing the same knowledge in different formats to suit their different temperaments and competences.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sindhuji has raised her hand. Please go ahead and ask.
Hi, thank you for the very good session on this. Manusmriti, normally when it comes to my mind, it's only about the controversies. So it is a real eye opener, I would say. But I have one question. In the sense, you mentioned Manusmriti as something like a textbook. And typically our concept of a textbook is whatever is given in the textbook is right. So why would the mentioning of Varna in a manner which is actually extremely controversial is given in an authoritative textbook? Or is it an interpretation problem? Or is it meant to be taught by some acharya to people rather than just people reading it and making their own interpretations?
All the Shastra books are ideally meant to be taught by a teacher. So we have in the Anuradhaji will know this, in the Advaita Sampradaya, Shankaracharya says, asampradaya with murko. I forgot the whole sentence. So you have to learn the teaching in the sampradaya under a guru, and this is applicable to all the Shastra teaching. Having said that, we have lot of preconceived notions about what Varna is, what isn't, or this is how it should be, or if it is not like then it is problematic. So these are all contemporary expectations that we superimpose on the text. The question we have to ask is, we should ask what Manusmriti itself is saying about Varna, or what the Dharma Shastra or any Shastra for that matter is telling about Varna. Because just like Dharma, Varna is also a Shastriya concept. Now today we use caste, etc. as a overarching term. We don't know what it is refers to. Sometimes it refers to Kula, sometimes it refers to Jati, sometimes it refers to something else. It also refers to Varna. So, but we have to have clarity on what category refers to what. So that is why in the book, if you can kindly check out my book, I have one whole chapter on this Varna to clarify what Varna is. So Varna is, there is an element of guna, there is an element of karma, yes, but Varna essentially is not a classification of professions. It is not a classification of psychological characters. They play a role, yes, but essentially Varna is a designation which indicates a person's ritual state or ritual condition. By ritual condition, what I mean is, for what path of dharma or what method of dharma is suitable for that person to attain that sukha, swarga, moksha, etc. That is indicated by varna. Presence of a varna or absence of a varna, or what type of varna is present or what type of varna is not present. All these questions has a bearing only on this question, that what method of dharma is suitable for a person to attain moksha. Now take the case of those who do not belong to any designation of the varna, brahmana, kshatriya, vaishya, shudra. For them also Manusmriti gives methods to attain moksha that I already discussed. Shankaracharya quotes that japa, tapas, etc. that I mentioned. So Manusmriti is already giving methods to everybody. So in the first 4 verses, why it is important? It has a narrative format. The 4 rishis approach Manu and ask him for teaching about dharma. That is, teaching about methods of dharma which can lead to sukha, swarga, moksha. And they specifically they include not only the 4 varnas, but also those who are outside of this varna or who cannot be classified into these varnas. So the very 4 verses shows that Manusmriti is all inclusive because it wants to teach dharma that is universal. Teach methods of dharma that can be used by anybody and everybody. There are some methods for some people, but there are many methods that are for everybody. So the relevance of dharma comes in this context. You please read the chapter and reflect upon it, because it took me years of effort to write that particular chapter on Varna. It's a 10,000 word chapter. It forms a very important part of the book. It is in Appendix 1. You will have greater clarity on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It helps. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I was just curious because you have also written a book on Manusmriti, Nithinji, that how did you select the first 4 verses? Are they the essence of the text? Why did you pick up these 4 verses and not anything in between or the end? Can you just guide our readers for that?
Yes, Sanuji. The reason I took these 4 verses was because they contain information about Anubandha Chatushtaya. As you are very much aware, any Shastra work has this Anubandha Chatushtaya, the 4-fold connections. What is the object of the text? What is the main subject matter which the text is discussing about? What is the purpose, or what is the end goal? What is the phala, prayojana of the text? Or who is the adhikari? Who is the intended audience to study the text? And what are the mutual connections between the text and the subject matter, between the subject matter and the end goal or the prayojana that we are speaking about? So all these ideas are hinted at, mentioned within the first 4 verses. So without a proper understanding of this, then any study of Manusmriti or any other work will be misleading. I mentioned in my presentation how the contemporary narrative that Manusmriti is either a constitution hegemonically imposed by a ruler, people see it as that book, law book, or as a biblical kind of work which is hegemonically imposed by religious authority, or as a book which has no relevance at all because it was never hegemonically imposed. So all these 3 categories of views, they are misunderstandings, misconceptions, because they don't understand the Anubandha Chatushtaya of the text. The text itself is positing itself as a Pramana Grantha. It is not, the narrative, the story is not that some king called Manu made a law that every word of this text is to be implemented, or created a religious institution to implement this. No. The first verse of the Manu says, Manum mekagramasinam abhigamya maharshaya. Manu, who was sitting asinam in ekagrata, that is in samadhi, abhigamya, went, a group of rishis went to the Manu who was sitting and requested him for teaching. You see, it is not somebody going out of his way to implement a system, but rather is to rishis approaching Manu as students. So this format is very instructive to understand the nature of the text. So without this understanding of the nature of the text, then all discussion of the text will be kind of like a blind man, group of blind men trying to understand how an elephant looks. So the first 4 verses act as a gateway to understand the entire Dharma Shastra tradition. We also have this precedence in the form of Chatussutri Brahma Sutra, wherein the first 4 verses are studied in separate, and we have Chatushloki Bhagavatam. There it is not the first 4 verses, but a select 4 verses from within the text, which is considered the essence of the book. So here it is not essence in the sense that everything is not introduced in the 4 verses, but it is hinted at, a gateway is given to approach the rest of the verse.
Thank you so much for opening this gateway to us in the language we are comfortable, which is English. So they are wonderful. You are a modern day Rishi for us. Viewers, please do read this book, and it's available, and we can pay respect to our great tradition, which is guiding us even today. As we may be living far away from India and those situations, but our day-to-day life challenges remain the same as they were 2000 years old, and the Shastra continues to guide us. So we're very grateful to Nithin ji for this. Any last questions anybody has, or I'll just say the closing prayers and end the session. Okay, so I think thank you once again, Nithin ji, for this.
Thank you,
And
Annaji.
we hope you write many more texts and many more books like this and continue to guide us. I'll just say the closing prayers now. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. As you know, Hindu Center is a voluntary organization and we have several events. Please do join our